I want us to become brothers again like we used to be, and for us to find ourselves and bond with each other. Can we agree to that?
Opinions vary.
Welcome to Three Brothers Filmcast. I'm Anton Bergstrom, and I'm here with my brothers.
Anders.
And Aaron.
My last name is the same as my brother's.
In this month, we're talking about 2024's latest legacy sequel hit, Tim Burton's Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice.
And here we go.
As of this recording, Beetlejuice 2, and I'm just going to dispense with the cute repetitive title, we're going to find ourselves tongue-tied. Now, Beetlejuice 2 has just topped the September box office for the second weekend in a row, as it closes on $200 million domestically. Admittedly, there's not a lot going on in theaters right now, and so this was a savvy release date for Warner Brothers. But I think it also speaks to the film's successes. It delivers on being a late or legacy sequel to the original, giving us more of Michael Keaton's memorable demon and showing Burton at his most competent in years. In my view, if you like the original movie, you will probably like much of what is going on here. But the many repetitions of the film, both in terms of plot elements, gags, imagery, songs, and even the doubled title, speak to the current dilemma we need to address. This is our fourth monthly podcast in a row in which we've discussed a late or legacy sequel. And our 2024 season also includes one more traditional sequel, Dune Part 2, and one classic remake, the Jake Gyllenhaal Roadhouse. Inside Out 2 has ruled the box office this summer. And next month we have Joker 2, while December we will see the long-awaited Gladiator 2. More than the reboots, requels, and franchise extensions of recent years, 2024 seems marked by twos and sequels, legacy, late, or more ordinary.
Okay, Ramblers, let's get rambling.
When I was a teenager, a trickster demon terrorized our entire family and tried to force me to marry him. I believed he was gone forever until you found this in the attic.
Ew. Who's Beetlejuice?
Don't ever say that name.
Beetlejuice.
No, Astrid, I am serious. If you say his name 3 times, he will appear.
Beetlejuice.
The juice is loose.
I'm gonna make you so happy.
So now, before we get into our takes on Beetlejuice 2 and Tim Burton in 2024, I want you to briefly go on the record about the original film. Do you like it, and when was the last time you saw it? Why? Because I think a movie like Beetlejuice operates almost entirely in relation to its predecessor. So Aaron, your review on Beetlejuice 2 was published just after the sequel opened, but what do you think about the original?
I think it's my favorite Tim Burton movie at this point.
Yeah.
I literally watched it last Halloween. I wanted to watch kind of a macabre movie that's nice, and that's kind of how I think of Beetlejuice, the first one. It's a cozy movie about death, which is a really strange way to think about it, but it is. It feels nostalgic and warm, despite being kind of grotesque.
Yeah, I see that.
And you can understand why kids love it.
Anders, when's the last time you saw it?
The last time I watched Beetlejuice was probably close to a decade ago, maybe less than a decade. So in my recent adult life, but I like it, but I think I'd only seen it once or twice when I was younger. And while I like what Michael Keaton's manic energy and everything, it was never one of my favorite or film that I really wanted to go to, even though a lot of my friends and other people I knew liked the movie a great deal. Maybe partly because of the cartoon show that was on when I was a kid and stuff. But
it was a franchise movie.
I like it, but sorry.
It was a franchise movie even back then. Yes,
exactly. I mean, many of those did, right? I mean, and it's something Burton, and we can get into that later, how Burton, Batman the movie spawned the animated series, Beetlejuice had a cartoon, all these kind of things. But I like Beetlejuice, but I've always felt it's a little bit slight. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. I admire its sort of whimsical, design and it's always more grotesque and a little risque than people often remember. But to me, it's not as distilled as something like Nightmare Before Christmas, in the sense that it's I think it's a little more slight in some ways, even though that's a slight film. I guess it's just I prefer the aesthetic of the other films, some of the other films. So
Yeah. So I probably like Beetlejuice best among Burton's movies. I haven't watched Ed Wood in many, many years, and I always thought that that was like a very good movie. Um, in my review I wrote of Beetlejuice, I always thought of it as like the touchstone or the epitome of Burton. But interestingly, I didn't really watch it ever when it came out, and I didn't even watch it in the '90s. And the first time I watched it was, I don't know, a decade and a half ago, and I just really like it. I think Aaron, you pointed out it's a combination of, being this macabre, gothic, satire, black comedy, all these sort of things jammed together, but it's also like a traditional comedy. It's all about restoring order into, like, you start with an agent of chaos, Beetlejuice, and all these things and problems are caused, and it ends with sort of the reunion of the family and things coming together. So I actually think it's like quite charming in that sense. Now that sort of sets the stage, because this movie Beetlejuice 2 or Beetlejuice, like it clearly operates for people who want that nostalgic throwback. It is a legacy sequel. And then I'd also like to talk about, like, whether you think this movie will appeal or has appealed to people who are maybe had never even, like, could you watch this movie if you've never even seen the original Beetlejuice? Would you take anything out of it? So, Aaron, like, you gave it a 5 out of 10. You said it was Burton's best movie in years, but you still were kind of mixed on it. And I think you said basically that, like, the story's kind of a mess, even if still like Michael Keaton. Anything else you want to elaborate?
I think the moment in the movie that sums it up in terms of the messiness of the story is just, well, it's twofold. One is that it spends, a decent amount of time in the early going talking about Monica Bellucci's, is it Dolores?
Yeah.
Beetlejuice's ex-wife, who is this like soul sucker witch type figure, but she's almost presented as like a bride of Frankenstein, and she reconstitutes herself.
That's one of the best scenes in the movie.
Yeah, it's cool. It's got Danny DeVito in a little bit part there as a guy janitor who killed himself drinking
a blue
a bunch of like paint thinner or something. It's really gross, turpentine. But it builds her up as this threat, and then it's like she just disappears for 50 minutes.
Yeah.
Like there's no momentum in that. And then the other is that there is a moment once Beetlejuice is brought back into Lydia's the daughter.
Yep.
Yeah, so Winona Ryder's Lydia and her daughter, played by Jenna Ortega, their life. And
Astrid, I think is it?
Yeah, Astrid. It's Astrid. And Beetlejuice is like, he's been roped in to try and deal with stuff, and they're kind of searching for something. And at one point he just is like, I got something to do or whatever. And he like disappears, right? For a bit. And then it just picks up a little bit later, and there's kind of a key sequence where you think that Astrid is going to get whisked off somewhere, and he just pops up inside the little like booth and takes over and is like, see you later, sucker.
And solves the problem with
solves the problem immediately. But it's also, it's so baffling because his reaction in that moment is like we are missing several scenes about him understanding what the situation is, but we don't get any of that. He just pops up and solves a problem where I'm like, I thought he's doing his own thing here. Like, it's like this weird moment where we're assuming all this like motivation and plot mechanics that we never get. You just get cut to this funny little moment of him screwing over another bad guy. And it works with the Agent of Chaos stuff, but however much I enjoy Keaton again and aspects of this movie, and Justin Theroux's kind of deranged I fiance really character, and Catherine O'Hara's got some one-liners that are funny. However much I enjoyed watching the movie, because I did enjoy watching the movie, I'm just like, this is just a bad script. It really is a bad script. Yeah. And Burton, at the end of the day, is only as good as his scripts. Because however much of his style is, he's not a master filmmaker to the point where he can like overcome a shortcoming in his script.
I'd go even further. I'd say that Burton is always almost overwhelmed by his production design and sort of costumes and the characters that he's imagined, to the point that not only is his script, but his filmmaking itself, the choices that he makes as a director are often, they shift. They lean really heavily, I think, on whoever his cinematographer and other collaborators are very often. So like, Beetlejuice 2 feels very much a modern film in a lot of its ways, even as it gestures at times to, I hate the term, but practical effects and miniatures and things like that, which are sort of metatextual with the model of the town up in the top of the house and stuff. But for me, like, and maybe this is why I don't hold Beetlejuice as highly, even the original, as you guys do. I think it's a film even then that always the bright and zany production design and curious things tend to overwhelm my feelings of the other things. But I will say, I remember the last time I watched Beetlejuice, I think it was actually closer to like 6 years ago, because I was actually living in the house I'm living in now. I recall thinking about, though, how in that movie maybe it was the sturdy 80s construction. There was some beats in terms of the way that some scenes were set up that seemed almost elegant. And so I would agree, it is definitely one of his better films. I think it was a scene where Catherine O'Hara is like in her bathroom, and then like the house, something gets smashed in, and he doesn't do the typical, 2 shots, reaction shots and things like that, and allows it to all play out in a single way. This film, I mean, it's probably almost indistinguishable from probably some of the TV shows that, and things like that.
So what's your overall takeaway on the new one?
I enjoyed elements when I was watching it. I think I concur with you that Keaton's good, but I actually think there's not even enough of him in it. I think Justin Theroux's funny, and Catherine O'Hara's funny. I think the relationship between Lydia and Astrid is undercooked and doesn't pack the emotional wallop, and therefore the plot itself, which centers so heavily on the resolution of that mother-daughter relationship, rings kind of hollow. And then it tries to do that big set piece in the church at the end. And so ultimately, I think the movie runs out of steam. I might be even a little harsher on it than Aaron in his review.
So are you a negative on it?
Yeah, I'm a negative on it. It wasn't a painful thing to watch. Like I said, I enjoyed elements of it. It looks pretty good in terms of some of its production design and makeup effects and stuff.
But I just
don't think it's a very good movie.
Okay. So I probably am the most positive. I'm a modest positive on Beetlejuice 2. I give it like a 6 out of 10. I liked it. I agree that the storyline, the plotting, is the weakest element of the movie. But I think aspects of it, in particular Keaton, compensate enough for me that overall it works for me. I also think a lot of the supporting cast is really strong. And I think partly because you have some people who are like like Catherine O'Hara is like, she's as good as she's ever been these days, right? Coming out of Schitt's Creek and stuff. So she's really good. Winona Ryder also having, somewhat a late career resurgence with like being in Stranger Things. She's pretty good in it. Michael Keaton doesn't have as much energy.
Is she really? But I feel like, and I feel like her character is kind of, even because in the original, things are filtered through her. She's the bridge between her parents, buying the house and the ghosts and everything like that. Here she seems and it's the way they've written the character. She seems kind of lost, and kind of like she don't got the juice,
No, but I don't think she ever did. So your comment that like the mother-daughter relationship doesn't satisfy. I would actually go in a different direction and say that I didn't like that the movie tried to have any emotional weight to the mother-daughter relationship or anything else. Because I think the original Beetlejuice, it's the kind of movie where there's the sweetness comes from its recognition of like the comedy genre and things on like a thematic level of like restoring order to a household, bringing things together, expelling the agent of chaos. It's not because we feel any arc has taken place with the characters. All the characters are types. They're not multi-dimensional characters. And the original one leans into that. It's not interested in trying to ever sell you any sort of a relationship, where this movie tries to establish it's a bait and switch with the boy who turns out to be a ghost. I thought that was, or at least it was effective for me in the sense that like I actually, for whatever reason, I don't know why, I didn't actually realize he was a ghost until the moment where the twist occurs. And so I was like, it actually worked for me. But then the fact that the movie kind of like doesn't know what to do with it and just has that guy ejected, into hell by Beetlejuice on sort of, an impromptu moment. Like, again, it's like, well, why did we even have that plot? Why did we have the Dolores? Like, to me, the movie is more stitched together. But what the difference is that the original one doesn't have a great storyline. Like, I always thought that,
which is why it'll never be one of my favorites. Yeah.
But in some sense, I would argue that in the original one, its stitched togetherness feeds into the frenetic energy that is like Beetlejuice. Like, the movie has, what I love about the original is that the movie has like a manic energy drawing off the energy of Keaton's performance that you don't really ever know what's going to happen. So all of a sudden they step outside the door and we're getting sandworms on Saturn. You're like, what is going on? And I love the bizarre manicness of this. This movie doesn't have any of that. There's stuff I like in it, but all of its sort of manicness is pre-calculated because it's borrowed from the original one. So it doesn't have like the authentic juice until we ever get some scenes with Keaton. And he's the one who's only bringing, I feel like, the best of the manic energy. He's not as energetic. I mean, he's like older. And, in the original, when Keaton bursts onto the scene, like, I compare it to like, it's when the genie jumps out of the lantern. It's like when, again, Robin Williams comes on air in Good Morning Vietnam. It's like one of those moments where all of a sudden just someone bursts onto the screen with like such energy, and it's like amazing.
Babs. Boy, do you know how to pick up. Let me ask you something. Is this relationship really solid? Do I have a shot at her at all? Excuse me. Sure. Am I overstepped my bounds? Just tell me. Come on. You know what's really beautiful about this? You two kids picked me. You didn't have to, but you picked me. It makes me want to kiss you guys. Come on. Come on. Give me one. Come on.
But also in the original, he's like a Hannibal Lecter figure. Everyone's talking about Beetlejuice before we ever see him. So you build up that expectation. In this one, they needed a little bit more of a powerhouse when he enters on. But like, overall, like, I kind of liked everything he was doing. But for me, like, there's enough there that I liked that I enjoyed it. I do think Burton, he's like a commercial auteur. You can tell it's his films, but it's not coming from any cinematic form. It's like the design and the subject matter aesthetic.
It's funny you made the Hannibal Lecter comment, because what Hannibal Lecter's in Silence of the Lambs only 19 minutes or something.
Yeah.
Michael Keaton's only in Beetlejuice 17 minutes.
Oh yeah? Yeah. So, okay. Like, so again, if you've clocked it, it is much lower than what we all remember.
Yeah. Or like the
About
Joker
how
in The Dark
long
Knight.
Michael Keaton's in Batman Returns too.
You're right. He's Batman in that movie.
No, I really like Keaton. And this movie is a good reminder of, like, he's similar to Robin Williams. That's probably the closest. He's similar to Robin Williams or Tom Hanks, I would say, in that Michael Keaton's this kind of like beloved 80s comic leaning actor, right?
That's a good way to put it, comic leaning. He's not a comedian.
Yeah, but he's not a comedian.
Yeah.
And he's a good dramatic actor too, even though he gets fewer opportunities to do that kind of stuff. But the thing that Keaton really has that I'd say even what Robin Williams doesn't really have is, like, his energy is not just it's not just verbal. It's like completely physical, and to the point where you're like somewhat concerned what he's going to do physically in any given moment. So
he's going to get into your space.
No,
like,
exactly. He's going to do something
like,
creepy and gross or like kind of assaultive, and he's just going to like worm his way in there and just do something absolutely untoward, which is hilarious in the old one. But he even has that in other performances where, he'll leverage it for almost like a dangerous side. It's the scene that makes fun of it the most, right? It's in Batman. Want to get nuts?
Let's get nuts.
Yeah.
Now you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
That's a hilarious scene for the idea that it's Bruce Wayne. It's just his Bruce Wayne's such a nerd. It's so funny. But Keaton has a madcap energy that is truly singular. Like, I can't think of another actor who actually has the same energy that he has when he's on screen. And so it's nice that you can get much of that here when he shows up. It's just too bad that the movie robs Beetlejuice somewhat of the antagonistic energy, because he's not the core villain, because you want to be affectionate towards him because he's the reason you're here. And to be fair, Beetlejuice's nefarious plot is like the villain in a Shakespearean comedy, right? He wants to marry somebody. He wants to get out of the bad situation and like make himself have some fun. He's not like trying to kill people or whatnot, right? Like he's not a monster. He's more of just like
he's just selfish.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
maybe why it's fitting that in the Much Ado About Nothing he plays the ridiculous
Dogberry.
Dogberry, the
Yeah.
sheriff or whatever.
In Brandon's
Like,
film, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great reference point too. Yeah.
So it's nice having Keaton, but I recognize all the things you're saying, Anton. I just throughout the movie, unlike in some other movies this summer, say where I was more forgiving with Alien, Romulus, or Twisters of little elements that bugged me, at least in those, I understood that there's a story that is actually pulling me through and the arc is satisfying to me. I'm not saying that Tim Burton actually needs to have an arc in his movies for them to be effective. The issue here is that there's so much plot.
Yeah.
There's so much narrative happening that the fact that it doesn't satisfy those things is like, well, if you weren't actually interested in the A and the B and the C plots, why did you give me so many?
Yeah, like truth be told, the entire Dolores Monica Bellucci dead wife plot should have just been a joke tangent.
It should have been the flashback to the black
just had that
scene.
That was one of the best
scene,
parts of the
and then
movie, to be honest.
he has a flashback scene, and we finally understand how Beetlejuice died and like things like that.
I think that's the
Why
best
he's
part
in
of
the
movie.
play. But we
All
don't
in Italian.
need,
It's clever.
we don't need like the only thing she facilitates that's worthwhile was a character I forgot to mention, but I thought Willem Dafoe's Wolf Jackson was quite humorous. I liked him as sort of the
Yeah, he is. Like, I didn't dislike him when he was on screen, but you're right. I totally forgot about that, even though I just watched the movie. Because again, it's kind of a throwaway, right? Like, it's a gag.
He's superfluous, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
you don't need him.
It's not that he's bad; he's good in it. Like, I always like Willem Dafoe.
But you can see, like Dolores, you can see the stitching that holds everything together, right? Like
each of those things could have been a movie,
and you can see that they're like, we'll bring in this so that we can have this supernatural cop who's like, has his crew. How else will we write this into it? Like you can see too much of that stitching. And it's the same thing with like they don't know. Like I thought, Aaron, in your review, one of the great comments was that the unsung important figures in the original who are great are Alec Baldwin, Gina Davis. Their Maitlands are great, and the thing is that they're the normies who are bewildered by the afterlife, the bureaucratic afterlife. We're gonna have to wait in this waiting room, and they hate the Dietzes moving into their house, but they have enough personality that they're also likable normies. And like we like the fact that they're looking forward to their stay home vacation. He's gonna like work on his things, and like there's just touches around the edges of like what's been going on. There's suggestions of infertility, and like there's things like that are present in the family that make us like them. But this movie doesn't have a proper normie to be bewildered by.
It thinks 100%. Astrid is it.
She's not.
Astrid's not. She's the lady.
She's a Dietz.
But is this a problem, a generational problem that like you can't have a normie?
No, but it's not even that. It's like it lacks those characters at all. And then it tries to make the Dietzes those characters.
But so even if you were going to make Astrid be the normie who doesn't understand, is bewildered by the supernatural, right? And you can't undo, Lydia's connection and things like that. What you'd have to do is not try and make her a loner character.
You make her the normal kid.
They should have just made her
that's
the cool kid.
No, exactly. If she was just a classic, that maybe Jenna Ortega's miscast, and they just had to have her in there because she's the bankability for the Wednesday connection.
Yeah, and totally brought in.
Right. So you understand that, and I think Jenna Ortega's pretty good in most things. She's not bad here. But yeah, the funny thing would be if you had this like, I don't know, really like chipper if you had like a Mean Girls character.
Yeah.
Like.
And they'd be totally bewildered and super annoyed that all of this is going on. Whereas she just is sort of like sullen. And we already have enough sullen characters that we don't need like one more. So it's like they were trying to make her kind of like, well, you'll be like Lydia was in the first one. Kind of like a loner outcast girl. But then we don't have any of that sort of like grounding. Because
it doesn't work when your mom's Elvira. It doesn't work.
I did want to say something about it's interesting how plot... You said, like, this movie has so much plot and yet so little, in a weird way, right? Like, there's so many little tangents of things that are stitched together, but there's no real...
Plotting without a plot.
Plot, exactly, right? But, I mean, that's a common mistake, complaint that you could level against Burton. I think a lot of his movies are sort of episodic or you know, and or you take like a film, like, which is one of my favorites of his, like Sleepy Hollow, and you have Andrew Kevin Walker's ridiculously like convoluted detective script, you know, that, and the giant reveals and villain monologues at the end and stuff. But honestly, I mean, it's too much, but it's at least like going somewhere. You know what I mean?
It might be one of his most like fleshed out scripts.
But I think
right?
that it makes me think that Burton's just maybe not particularly interested or discerning about scripts. Like,
Well, I don't think like again, like I think he's not, I guess, dare I say, just I don't know if Burton's a storyteller.
yeah,
I don't know if that's what Burton's like going for. He's going for like the construction of like a scene and the construction of like whether it's a gag or an action set piece, but he's not thinking in terms of like storytelling. And in that sense, like, you know, like I'm not like it, you know, the term auteur, like, it doesn't necessarily mean the person's great, but it just means that I can always tell when I'm watching a Tim Burton movie. But it's not based on like how the film is edited, the camera work. You're very right that like I rewatched Batman recently, and you're like, that movie looks like it's of its time, you know, 89, and then this movie looks like it's of its time now from the way the camera works and stuff.
I just want to quickly go back to the comment briefly where Anton, you made, where it's like, is there room for a normie in this situation anymore, in this kind of story? And
Well, they killed off the one who was always like the more normal, was like the dad, right?
Yeah, and I understand you can't have Jeffrey Jones in this movie again. They had him in Deadwood movie briefly, and that was kind of just David Milch is dying of Alzheimer's slowly, and he just wanted his way for his final work kind of thing. And so they just let that happen. But with this movie, I think it's almost a commentary on what Hollywood and our like pop culture has become, in a sense, where this idea that because of internet like segmentation and the, you know, nicheification and algorithmic pandering of how people engage in the world, everybody thinks that they're like the loner outsider special kid, but in actuality everybody's like that. It's like the people who think that Taylor Swift is like the underdog, and it's like, no, she's the like ubiquitous pop culture celebrity. Everybody likes the Taylor Swift. There's nothing special about liking Taylor Swift. It's not a personality trait. And so it's almost fitting that it's come full circle with Burton, because when I was younger, I always used to think that Burton was the favorite filmmaker for kids who want to compensate for their lack of personality. And so it would be like, I have a Jack Skellington sweater, and I really, really love Batman, but specifically just the Burton Batman movies. And, you know, Pee Wee Herman is hilarious, and he's like the funniest. It's this idea, like, and, you know, Burton, I love Burton because he's kind of twisted, you know, like me. Like, you don't know. You look at me and you think I'm normal, but I'm actually kind of weird. And it's just this idea, and they're like, oh, Tim Burton, he's kind of this like out there director. And it's like, no, he's always been a commercial director from the get-go.
Yeah.
He made a adaptation of a TV show as his first movie. He made Beetlejuice as his second movie, and he made Batman as his third movie.
And they gave him Batman because he had a proven bankable track record on his two previous movies.
And also because he does what the studio tells him. He's not a distinctive storyteller. He doesn't actually have any unique aspects except for the superficial stylistic ones. And to be fair, they're a very recognizable stylistic approach. Like, you have to give Burton credit for inventing a American Gothic, pop American Gothic approach.
So I dispute. I don't know if I'd say it's superficial, but I agree that it's
it's superficial in the sense that I don't think there's much thematic there beyond the fact that doing the kind of, I don't know, like the dime store David Lynch idea. It's like a dime store David Lynch of there's like a dark underbelly to Americana, but it's Halloween version, not Blue Velvet version.
Right. So but I will, I got to give Burton his due. You know, like, you go back through his filmography, his first like 6 movies that I haven't seen Mars Attacks, actually.
And I rewatched it. I watched it for the first time recently. I'll bring it up after.
But I'll just say, I trust that it has some interesting things in it. I remember liking some of the designs and stuff. But Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Beetlejuice, Batman, Edward Scissorhands, which I think is one of his key works, Batman Returns, Ed Wood, Mars Attacks, and then and Sleepy Hollow, up till the end of the 90s, like, that's a pretty good run. of
It is.
movies, right? But I think then he gets pushed completely out of his comfort zone with Planet of the Apes. Then he tries to pivot to like doing like prestige stuff with Big Fish, a film that I know a lot of people say is one of their favorite Burton films. I'm not a fan of that film. I do not like Big Fish.
Yeah, I couldn't take.
And then Charlie and the Chocolate Factory begins to run. Like Sweeney Todd gets by just because Sondheim's music's great, but I don't think it's a great film.
But there's again a movie that I know is highly rated by some people.
But they have to admit that it's because Sondheim's great, and it's not that it's like anything. The film itself is anything amazing. Like, so I think Burton, like, if he really needs to be working with studio executives who know his limitations and can work with them, because then when he works with very good production designers and cinematographers and people and some script writers, he can do some fun stuff, right? But fun. It's actually fun. This is one of the things, like, I think the Batman movies are a good litmus test, because you were saying, Aaron, comparing him to like, oh, he's twisted and he's, this and that. And I remember, especially when I was young, there was people comparing Schumacher's Batman to Burton's Batman. I'm saying,
One was dark and edgy.
And one's dark and edgy and one's camp. And I'm like, they're all camp.
Yeah,
Camp's
always been a part
in fact,
of
I
this
actually
aesthetic.
think that the Burton ones are more pure camp because they're not trying so hard to be. There's very few movies that are as like arch as like Batman Returns. Like, it's borderline something out of like the 1930s and expressionist films. Like, it's so camp.
We want the big guy. The guy who runs the show. What do you want? Not you. Shrek.
Expressionism's another. Like, so Burton, like, he's someone who he there's certain genres and aesthetics that he's picked up on, and then he turned them into a brand.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, he has a distinctive mark, but it's kind of always the same brand stamp he puts on the thing.
Which is why he literally brands the t-shirts that they sell at Hot Topic to gothic leaning girls, not real goths, but
then he, like, so it's like there's expressionism, there's always a gothic element, because that brings in sort of like gothic in the sense of with the romance and the sentiment as well as the supernatural and the mystery. There's a satirical dimension. Aaron, like, you're right, it's sort of a soft critique of Americana and stuff, but never really getting at like a dark black comedy, which leans into the macabre. He'll play it for humor as well as to be grossed out.
Mm-hmm.
Like in this one of the best parts of that is just this absolutely disgusting Beetlejuice baby, which, like, it's one of those things where, like, it's almost like at times tasteless enough that I don't even know if I like it being in the movie, but it actually was like gross to me. Like, and then a bit of horror and always a sort of a campiness at times too. But he literally, from every movie, I mean, I haven't seen Pee-wee's, but like from Beetlejuice on, which is the touchstone and the epitome in my view, everything's been stamped with that to some extent, even things like Big Fish and smaller dimensions. And sometimes this has worked and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's like, I think his absolute worst movie that I've seen is Alice in Wonderland, which I just think is a terrible movie.
Yeah.
It also kickstarted a horrible thing.
A terrible thing of, like, it literally gave Disney the blank check to just do,
because it made too much money.
Work ever.
Yeah, it made so much money. But you're right also that Ed Wood then sets one of his thematic templates, which again he plays again and again and again. Where we're gonna have the loner sort of goth.
Well, Edward Scissorhands is even before
Edward
that.
Scissorhands.
Sorry, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, so you
They're
always
both
have
Eds.
yeah. So you have the loner goth sort of outsider. But Aaron, I think you're very right that there's a strange dynamic that when I was young in the 90s and the 2000s, a lot of the people who like Tim Burton would portray him as being sort of like countercultural. And maybe Tim Burton's a much better expression of how aspects of that sort of counterculture aesthetic, whether it's goth or whatever, gets absorbed into sort of the mainstream and the mass. Because we're at a stage, right? You're right with this whole Jenna Ortega stuff, where it's like all the subcultures. There isn't like a normal mass culture, but then there's all these subcultures are sort of mainstreamed. So you almost are like, there isn't actually sort of, is like, is there even a normie culture you could portray in a movie? Like, that thing doesn't even necessarily exist. But like, I think you're right that he's just a great example of that sort of like, he's playing with things, pushing things, but very much within a commercial framework, and is never truly subversive. And I'm not saying you have to do that, but
No.
I'm just saying like we have to recognize that he's not.
It does make some of the like stuff with Justin Theroux's Rory kind of funny. A guy who's trying to like milk that sort of macabre ghost stuff, even though he doesn't really believe in it
as
himself.
almost like self commentary criticism.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe not, but I mean,
well, the way he's like he takes Lydia Dietz and then sort of sells her. I mean, whether it's a critique of himself or just people
Hollywood,
sort of doing that sort of thing. But I think also like I just say about Justin Theroux's character, like to me, partly why I give this movie, a soft positive, would be that I think there's not many times where I get these days where I get like a rounded out supporting cast where almost all the characters I'm like quite enjoying. Like, Justin Theroux was like as funny as anything in that movie. And, I always have thought that the original Beetlejuice is a movie where like every character is awesome. They're all types, and like I'm not saying they're deeply dimensional, but even like Otho or like
Otho's great.
Yeah, like he's a great little character, and he's hilarious. And it's not just Keaton. And so I think this movie is not as good, but like I didn't dislike any of the cast, and in fact I actually quite enjoyed when the different side characters were shown.
Yeah, even like
I even liked when I really liked
Burn
the
Gorman
use
to be a weird priest.
At first I thought using the shrunken head guys was gonna get.
I
weirdly like came around and like liked it more and more. They were.
Okay. The most genuine moment of pathos in the movie is when Bob gets killed by Dolores, and then the gag at the end is pretty funny too.
But I also like the way like a great example of just Beetlejuice being kind of just a jerk and like scumbag. Like he's just the way he's like Bob.
He'll get to you first.
Me. Yeah, he'll kill you, and then I'll know. Like,
no, that it is enjoyable, that kind of stuff. I don't know though. Is Winona Ryder actually good in this? No. I don't think she is. But I think her character is also like, it kind of sucks all the vitality out of Lydia as a character. And it's a script issue. Lydia in the original she's reserved because she's dejected over her parents, like her dad and her stepmom. But she's also witty and seems to be like extremely able to take care of herself in a way that is like above her years. And here, for some reason, Lydia just seems somewhat hapless. And she seems bitter, but we don't get any reason for that really, because we never really learn anything about her ex-husband who died.
No.
And
or just husband. I don't think.
No, it's ex.
Yeah, they were separated before he died.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, the Brazil who went and died at piranhas in Brazil. And the movie tries to play for pathos there.
Again, it shouldn't.
It doesn't really work. Again, Ortega, the best part of the Ortega stuff is her encounters with the ghost kid that we don't know is the kid, ghost. But like, I just don't know if it's doing Ryder any favors, and I don't think she brings much here that makes me happy to see her again.
Well, I guess you guys don't watch Stranger Things, and like I just think I'm not
sure
sure
the first season. And she was good. She did well in that.
But I just have to be like, what's the appeal of Winona Ryder? Like, what was it before? Because like I would just say like her appeal now is like I just think she plays like decent, kind of annoying in their sort of quirky way, like mom figures. And I
don't think she's got enough spunk here.
No,
I don't think she's got enough energy. She seems sapped of the energy, which is the thing that I think about her in 80s movies, but then I really like Heathers. That movie's awesome, I think.
Genuinely dark too.
much like Mean Girls is good, but Heathers is better, and we all know it's kind of the original one. But yeah, Slater's awesome. But even in like the late 90s stuff, like last episode I was talking about, I like her in Alien Resurrection, and I like her in Girl Interrupted. I like her in those movies. She's good, but part of the thing is that she's presented as this kind of she is our like normal figure with like a sad edge that allows us to see vulnerability. There's a sympathy inherent there with her, but the thing that makes us root for her as the heroic protagonist is this kind of indomitable energy or spirit that like pushes through the hardship, and I don't get any of that here. She just seems like a sad mom, and that's not particularly entertaining to watch.
Yeah,
I think you make it also a good point that like it's a point of contrast again between sort of Jenna Ortega's Astrid and Lydia as the child or the teenage character in the original. For whatever reason, like this movie except during the final sequence where they're all being manipulated and made to sing that song. Astrid's never really the center of like humor. Whereas one thing I do point out in the original is that even though Lydia, we're supposed to like Lydia and be annoyed with her family, she's also the subject of humor and satire. And we're supposed to laugh and mock her like overwrought sort of gothic stuff.
Well, we make fun of her. We make fun of the Maitlands. We make fun of everyone in the original.
But this movie, partly through like some of the choices, like we're not. This movie, like you could have done it in a way, but we're not supposed to laugh at that. She's like, I'm devoting my whole life to protesting climate change. Like, you know, like that's not played for a joke. Where you could push it a little bit further and make it into a joke.
Yeah, why isn't Beetlejuice at some point like, here's some greenhouse gas for you? Yeah, like blast her with something.
Like yeah, but you know, like it won't do that. And you know, movie in 2024 won't do things like that. But you're just like, she's kind of like kept worse. I like for some reason the movie like thinks you can't make fun of her, and I feel like she'd be a more appealing character overall if she was the subject of more humor.
Yeah,
because even at the end when she's like doing some of her like forced like dancing, you know, stuff, she's actually capable of doing that sort of a performance.
Well, but isn't that the whole thing with? I never watched Wednesday, but there's the weird dance scene that people are obsessed with, and they're like doing her goth dance.
So
but it's not meant for laughs again. It's supposed to be like, it's played as like, look at this weird, sad weirdo, but it does the Burton reaction of everybody being like, I'm that weirdo. Oh, that's me.
That weirdo's me.
So something funny about the song, the recurring song that appears both versions of.
Yeah, what is the song?
So the song is MacArthur Park. It's like a 60s hit though that was gained its popularity when it was re-recorded by Donna Summer as a disco anthem in the 70s, right? But the original version, which they sing along to in the church, was actually performed by Richard Harris, the actor, like the Irish actor.
What?
Yes. So very strange.
Richard Harris.
Yeah. Anyway. So, but you then get the disco version too, right? The Donna Summer version, which is and I think it plays on the sort of juxtaposition of strange imagery and things like that it wants to play with. But yeah, so like that kind of gives it this kind of like it has, you know, and then you get the Soul Train gag, which is like
very strange.
It's and just they did it too many times.
Yeah, no, like, it's almost like if it was one gag, it'd be funny, but it's like really, you're gonna stay with this? Really?
I'm not gonna lie. It a part of me almost liked it for the wrong reason, and it's because of like I like that producers aren't as sensitive now, and you can be like, we can have a gag that like maybe he's a little racist and we'll just do it a few times. It's fine because the only black people you see in this movie are people, soul brothers doing their dance. Like,
I know it's just strange. Like,
why is this?
Also, did you catch that at the very end it uses the music from Carrie, right? Yeah. So the music's somewhat interesting, but then it also will fall into like just like really like the most obvious kind of like uses of tracks. And then
we can't
I always enjoy it. Like when the
like,
movie started and we get the zooming over the model city with like Tim Burton stuff, I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be fun. I'm gonna get back into this. But it's like it's just not enough, you know? Like,
well, so is this the movie is I don't know, Anton, where you want to take this convo, but in terms of like legacy sequels, the movie that I actually wish it was is a movie that's just give me an hour and a half of Beetlejuice. Like, make him the main character, do it all him. Let's don't try and repeat the first movie because it has to be the legacy sequel. It might be.
If it was entirely set in that,
but it would be
like,
something
bizarre.
new. We didn't get that.
So you're right. Like, we got to talk about this movie as a legacy sequel. And like the opening right away shows that this is a movie that's not interested in doing anything new with Beetlejuice. We're gonna give you some of the hits you want. And the kind of the tired but almost funny because it's so tired aspect of like playing the Soul Train joke twice, maybe even 3 times. I can't remember.
3 times.
You know, like like okay, but like it's that kind of a movie where it's like that to me is one of the downsides of the movie is just and why I don't like why I'm more like, you know, I'm still positive on this, but like more softly in the sense of like I'd be much more enthusiastic if the movie didn't give me so many of these damn like I just have to like here you love the opening of the original Beetlejuice and like so we'll just do it again.
Yeah.
And everyone loves Deo, so we're just gonna have Deo sung at the funeral of the dad. And you're like, why? Like, I didn't find that funny, and I thought it was bizarre. And then I was like, it just felt like on paper, and we've talked about this in how many of the past episodes this summer, but
Obligatory.
you're just like, they had a box, the committee had put together, put together a list, and someone had to check a box. We have to hit Deo at some point. We have to show zooming over with Danny Elfman's theme.
Anton, I don't know if we even at this point need to attribute it to a human. It could be, I go to Chat GPT and say, what are the hallmarks of Beetlejuice? Give me a list of the top 10 hallmarks of Beetlejuice,
And
the
then
1988 movie. And it goes,
those.
no, overhead shots and miniature sets, Danny Elfman score, rollicking romp, the use of Deo in an ironic sense. It it just starts.
Yeah, you're right. It feels, and it shows that, like, to me, it's like it epitomizes, unfortunately, this sort of the creative sterility that kind of our age is in, epitomized also by like sort of the intervention and use of like AI stuff, right? Where it's like literally, for some reason, I don't know if audiences like it, but they're liking this one. But you're like, people kind of just want like, play me the greatest hits, and I just want to watch the greatest hits again. So it's like you go to a movie like this, and they're like, there's a level of this where it's just Beetlejuice greatest hits.
Yeah, and it
they
doesn't
feel
mean
like they
that
have to
it's
hit
all like you don't like it. Like another example would be like,
Well, you can
it's like
join the greatest hits album.
It's the movie version of like going on Spotify and you just play there's always the version for the like this is whatever the band is, right? Like, or like, and it's like it just plays all their biggest hits. But like, if you really like something, you might want to actually find out what are the rare gems or the things that didn't hit, and that maybe other people don't think it's as good, but you really like it, and allowing you to actually cultivate your own sense of taste. But people, it's like, I don't want to just attribute it to comic book culture, but like just the culture at large. It's about like exactly checking off boxes and collecting like experiences, right? It's like Instagram, like everybody has to go to the same like thing on vacation and see the same thing. It's like, well, but what happened to the thrill of adventure? And it doesn't mean that you don't want to go back to some places that you like over and over again for comfort. There's a place for that, but it's like, it's just kind of everything kind of then becomes this very like sameness. I don't know.
Well, it's
ironically,
but that speaks back to something we've talked about, where it's like it's the overlaying of a mass culture driven by mass technology with particularities, right? So what I mean is, like, you get a weird movie like Beetlejuice, which is a very bizarre movie in times, and you're like, and then that, but then we just want to sort of process that and turn that into sort of an easily consumed, repetitive like thing. But like, you're right about all those other examples you're talking about. I think also like it's the kind of movie where you're like, I'm debating in my head, Aaron, like whether on some level a movie driven just by Michael Keaton's Beetlejuice could be a fascinating thing to see. I'm curious of like how you could almost sustain it, because there is partly his appeal was always driven by the fact that he's not as present as we always think, because he has such a presence when he's there. But you're right that there's so much creative potential there to just go crazy.
You could go in so many different directions, because you could make a movie that is actually attempting to like exhaust you, like pummel you into a submission with where you are the target now, fully of his energy, as opposed to other characters on screen as your avatars.
Yeah.
But also in a weird way, if you actually wanted to create some kind of pathos or like sympathetic thing, Beetlejuice is also your avenue, because he's this weird, like tortured demon stuck in some weird life where you act like
they could have truly flipped it.
He has the meaningless existence actually, and the almost stuck in limbo in this like bureaucratic place where he actually can't unleash his energies in any proper sense at all. There's something almost inherently sympathetic about that. You could have made a very, I don't know, like revisionist Beetlejuice.
Well, how crazy would it be if you got 15 minutes at some point in this film where you get like Beetlejuice's life as a human being on a more mundane level? like there's things you could do here. Actually, if someone actually wanted to push something, maybe we'd spin off and get into, Birdman territory, and we'd be like, damn, like Inarritu doing a one shot of Beetlejuice. We didn't need this, but like,
Yeah.
Maybe they should have had Inarritu direct Beetlejuice too.
No, but just yeah, you see Beetlejuice is like, I don't know, his like green molds on the camera lens. But even what if you had a weird, like, I'm just thinking of humorous. This isn't Chris. This is even like productive, but it's just like reimagining what they should have done in the movie or what they could have done. But it's sometimes fun in a case like this. But like you could have had, and it might have been actually really funny, like a 5-minute sequence of like, what is Beetlejuice's day to day when like there's not some crisis?
Yeah.
Like how boring is his life? And it's not just, or his death. It's not just him sitting in the room, but it can almost like take that further. Like, does he sleep at night? What does his room look like? What does he do when he has nobody to be around? Does he just phone Bob in the middle of the night because he's bored?
But that shows us even like, so, one of the,
but it's funny.
One of the imaginative things that appeals about the original is the bizarreness, even if it doesn't cohere with the rules and stuff of like the afterlife. And that, like, it's funny that you're getting this weird bureaucracy of like how you have to wait in a waiting room and things like this. But this movie, apart from like things like the Soul Train, really don't expand our understanding of like.
I just love the idea that everybody
Soul Train 3 times when we couldn't even.
My question is, does it matter? Like, it doesn't matter what culture you're from. Like, I'm just trying to imagine it's always been like that. So you had medieval people who had to go into a Soul Train.
Yeah.
Like,
the ancient, like 3,000 years ago, people who came on the Soul Train. But like,
see, that's a funny gag. It's always been the Soul Train, and you see like Moses on it, and like
But like, so like, seeing more.
Brooks,
we get his office. We get his office, which is maybe the closest, and a few other things. The train station. But like, I would have liked to even expand further on that. But again, we're kind of getting into the what ifs.
Yeah.
Maybe like a couple things I'd like to touch on before we wrap up. But like one kind of like Tim Burton in 2024, we sort of talked about this, but like, are you kind of just tired of Tim Burton? Would you hope he makes anything else? They're already teasing, right? Beetlejuice 3.
And you have to do a third one, of course, right?
Well,
to make the joke of the title.
But then also like, like I said, I rewatched Batman recently. I watched Mars Attacks for the first time. And what struck me by that was that this is a movie that doesn't have most of the brand elements of Tim Burton. And it was kind of enjoyable as a 90s movie because I was like, we don't do like sort of celebrity spoof movies anymore. There's like a movie out of the 70s done in the 90s.
It's Mad World.
Yeah, something like that, where you have like a huge celebrity cast and it's a spoof, it's silly, like Jack Nicholson's the president. It came out the same year as Independence Day, which is weird. It has really terrible special effects, and the CGI is horrible of the guys, but you kind of think that like that's kind of the point of the movie because it's supposed to nod to like 50s and all those sort of sci-fi movies. But it was like, okay, so there's an example of Burton just being like Hollywood director. And, so it's like when we always sort of think that he's only kind of like this gothic outsider, like, like a movie like that, he made Mars Attacks and you're like, it shows some of his interests, like, his interest in Ed Wood with those bad sci-fi movies he's doing. But you're like, he likes 50s sci-fi. But other than that, it doesn't have those distinctive marks. But then Batman, when I was rewatching, I was like, even though this is not the Batman movie I want, in the sense of like, it's not my reading of the Batman story in any sense, at this stage, I have to recognize this as like, this is a significant blockbuster film. It's well done for what it is. And it also has definite artistic interests amidst the undeniable commercial nature of it. So it's interesting. But then, like I said, I think since Alice in Wonderland, I was trying to go through his filmography, and I was like, I don't even think I had seen until this one of his movies in a long time, because I just skipped them all over. Like, I didn't see Dark Shadows. I didn't see like this sort of like a weird kids school movie he made.
Yeah, I never saw that. I forgot that even existed.
Yeah. You saw Dumbo, right?
Yeah, I saw Dumbo. And to me, I mean, okay.
Is it a Tim Burton movie in any sense?
Yeah, I mean, it even has Michael Keaton.
Oh,
like,
okay.
and Danny DeVito and a lot of his people, it just fundamentally good pushes the Dumbo story beyond what it can bear, and it goes in places that I thought was kind of stupid. But like, I'm sure somebody had the idea that like, what if we did a Tim Burton Dumbo? Because he is kind
Creepy
of
circus.
creepy circus. You
Yeah.
got pink elephants, all that kind of scene and stuff like that. And like
Batman
again,
Returns is a creepy circus movie.
yeah, exactly. And he's good at that in that movie. But it's not that Dumbo is like the worst, even of all the Disney live action things. It's just it's so unnecessary and slight. It's like so yeah.
Aaron, have you seen anything of his, like, basically in the past couple like decades?
Not really. I mean, I hated Alice in Wonderland so much. I like actively avoided. And
That's fair enough.
I am more of a fan of Burton now than I used to be. Like I used to dislike Burton pretty actively, and then I realized that movies like Beetlejuice and Ed Wood, and then to a lesser extent his Batman movies and Edward Scissorhands and Sleepy Hollow, I'm like, I actually like these movies.
I quite like Sleepy Hollow. Like,
I think it's actually
like
underrated.
it looks so good. That movie's
But
like
I don't think Burton is bringing anything that I need anymore in cinema, and all of my interest in this movie, what is born out of my enjoyment of the original, but also my affection for Michael Keaton.
yeah.
And it's not Burton. I don't like.
Is
Burton,
this more of a Wednesday spinoff on some level?
kind of, but Burton's like an algorithm right now. You're right. I actually genuinely believe at some point in the 2000s, Burton just turned into a brand, and I'm not convinced he might not do anything on the movie. He might just stand around and like give it the old thumbs up, and that's it. Because you don't need him. You just need his name.
Yeah, and you have the checklist of the things they need to include.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like
It's perfunctory. There's nothing
Okay,
new. He's not surprising me.
This will sound sacrilegious to some people, but unlike with some other legacy sequels, I'm not convinced that this movie would have been significantly worse had Burton not directed it.
It probably could have been better.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting thing to think about. The weird thing is that, like, as the legacy sequels go, like, this probably for me is like, I like it more than a lot of them. Like, I don't, there's like quite a few of them where I actively like disliked and just thought,
Yeah, like I said, I wasn't like, I laughed a few times. It wasn't an unpleasant time at the theater. It's just I just don't think it's a very good movie.
But if someone who came from like a generation below, who had an interest in Tim Burton movies, and wanted to sort of reboot or like bring a new life to Beetlejuice, this character,
I'm not sure the movie would do anything for them. I think they'd be like maybe they'd go to see it because of Jenna Ortega. I guess I don't know. I think they'd be somewhat baffled at some things. Like,
I don't think anything nowadays is made for people with a fresh set of
period.
eyes.
No, it's just not made for people.
Well, okay, and using that, okay, last question to sort of round things off. What do we make of the sequel year? Like, this is a year, like, I literally went through and I was just like, there are so many late or legacy sequels. And it's not, like, besides kind of like the one big Marvel movie, like, Deadpool, Wolverine, it hasn't been a heavily franchise year. But it's like, we're getting a lot, like, the biggest movie of the year is just a regular sequel to a Disney movie. And then all of a sudden we're getting like these things from so long ago coming back. Like, we got Gladiator 2 coming up. And then things I didn't think that they'd make a sequel to, like Joker, are getting a sequel. It's a weird, like,
made so much money, it has to.
Yeah.
No, the funny thing is I actually probably liked some of the other sequels this year better, right? Like I liked Alien Romulus. I liked Twisters quite a bit.
See, like, I'm weirdly, like,
you can even consider it.
I'm more lukewarm on Aliens probably than Beetlejuice.
No, I would watch Romulus again right now. I liked it a lot. Maybe I like it more than when we recorded last month, but
I think it's kind of dire. I don't know. I maybe it's just the more you say it, the more it becomes true. But the whole idea that Hollywood is just sequels, remakes, and reboots has never been more true than now. And I think I said this on the Twisters and the Alien episodes that we recorded, where I'm like, I might be grading these on a curve because of if all we're getting are sequels, reboots, and remakes.
Yep.
Then I like these sequels. They're pretty good. I enjoyed watching them. They have a lot of the elements that I like about the original, but they don't seem devoid of character or narrative worth in their own right. I was having this conversation over the weekend with some friends who were, film obsessed or filmmakers themselves, and I really think it's a pretty dire year for movies.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it again. And I think the fact that all the biggest movies are like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with Inside Out 2 as a sequel, but, or the fact that we got Twisters and Beetlejuice making money. There's nothing bad wrong in and of itself. It's just you look at all the movies that come out and there's almost nothing else.
I think the other thing that makes me feel like dire about this year is that like I thought there might be the promise that like 2023 showed like a new way to do like a blockbuster between like the combined
Barbie
powerhouse of last summer of the Barbie Oppenheimer. And say what you will about those films, but you're just like, they were not just the regular franchise product, and they were like, they dominated movie going for the entire summer, and that's what we talked about last year. And then, but I can't. There's nothing like that this year. There's nothing like so far that like is just a regular movie, or like what I mean is like an alone sort of new work that's doing anything like that. And I looking at what's down the pipeline for the rest of the year, I don't think there will be anything.
I think they
like,
should.
I'm really looking forward to Coppola's new movie.
Netflix,
to finally see this crazy movie. But you're like that. No one's going to go see that.
I will. I'll go see it.
No, it's going to be a huge bomb. It's going to nobody's going to like it, but it's
because it's going to
because
it's an indictment of the world too. Clearly,
well, it's also an indictment of this like trapped in.
It might suck. Who knows?
Yeah. but it'll suck boldly.
But it seems interesting. No, I think I don't know what episode I said it, but like Dune Part 2 is the only movie this year where I'm like, I see the potential of where Hollywood's going in the new form of cinema in its specific way that's specific to this time and place. It's this era's answer to the Lord of the Rings movies or whatnot, right? Like it's the great adaptation that also captures what is the best of cinema at this time.
And even just happens to be the second movie.
Yeah. It just happens to be the second movie.
One, yeah.
But it plays very much like a
Okay, question, Aaron. I haven't seen it yet, but did you like Rebel Ridge?
I really like it. Yeah.
So movies like that, like Jeremy Saulnier, I really loved Green Room. I thought it was great. The problem is some of these there's a lot of, I think, directors that are interesting that are doing things, they're making them for Netflix, and then Netflix like buries them and nobody ever sees them.
Hitman too.
Yeah,
it just
like
gets sort of sucked out of.
So like I think that like there was a time where movies like that, if they had been put like in theaters, like a sort of action procedural type thing, or like a rom-com hitman type thing,
really,
like they might actually find an audience if they were even advertised. I'm not saying they even have to not be on Netflix, but like gotta let people find these things.
I know. Can Netflix actually just put a few ads on like websites to tell us to watch the movie?
But they don't even, when you go into it, they don't even like to prominently show like what's the new release thing.
Yeah.
No, cinema is not dead. There's still good movies and stuff. But the monoculture is probably dead, and I think Barbie and Oppenheimer is less of a way forward and more of a like it's the
last gasp.
The last gasp. I am, however much I love movies, I'm not actually super optimistic for the next bit. And I think a huge amount of that has to do with economic stuff that we don't have time to get onto in this podcast, but is essentially there's no accident that we're getting more of the same. And it comes down to the fact that the people who are making cinema, who are making the determinations in cinema these days, are not filmmakers.
They're not even executive producers like in the old way.
Exactly.
They're portfolio managers.
Exactly. They're VC people. They're not people who are actually interested in movies as a object or making
or even like pictures in the old sense.
No, exactly. The old sense is I am in this industry to make money, but my industry is movies. That's not the case anymore. And so, of course, everything goes to the lowest common denominator, and it's all interested in what is the thing that is going to get me the bump in the next quarterly fiscal report, and that's it. And the movie can literally disappear from time. We can delete it, as is the case with HBO or Warner Brothers Discovery stuff.
Yeah.
And with starring Michael Keaton, that movie.
Insane.
She was Batman again, and they just deleted it, which is absurd to think. But I think this is the era we're living in, and the thing that people think about, I think, is the thing that is not brought up sometimes is when people are like, well, movies are still great. Movies are great. It's like, yes, movies are great. There's always some interesting movies every year, indie, foreign, with this and the other. But the longer we go with this current path with American blockbuster cinema or like mainstream cinema, you're not going to get these people back, but you're also going to see like people are going to stop watching movies. They're just,
and they're going to
They're going to watch YouTube. They're going to watch
kids
TikTok,
today don't even know how to watch a movie. They don't have attention spans. They don't
But it even
like,
filters out to the other stuff because, like, I mean, you've seen some stuff at TIFF and you're going to be seeing more or writing more about it. But like, even to get into festivals often, it's like, I could just tell you, 10 different plots that probably show up in the movies that are at Hot Docs or TIFF.
Yeah.
Because again, it's sort of like, it's checking boxes for like we just seem so stuck in that when you see a glimmer of like innovation or
and because they are investment
so
pieces, like just the one thing I followed from TIFF was this controversy over this documentary about the Russian soldiers.
Oh yeah,
right. And that this isn't a pro Putin, but like there's such narratives that are like locked in, right? Like that you can't even show a sympathetic portrayal like of anti-war. It's like people have no idea how much the narratives are being controlled, even in a documentary art festival thing. It's like, yeah, movies, because they're so connected into money, it's like we just don't have any. There's nothing novel or new anymore.
So I'm going to be listing like Twisters as my it's gonna be my
top 10
this
it's
year.
Pretty sad.
No, I know it's and then the few interesting movies that are still franchise movies like Furiosa don't make money, and so you're not.
Yeah, the one
saddest thing.
Talk about
my
a
favorite movie
of
the summer.
Well, you talk about like a blockbuster that's just insane at times, and it's a shame more people didn't see it. Hopefully, some people will go out and discover it.
She took away his voice, and they spent the rest of the day in silence. There are those who prefer that she did more than shoot him. They claim that she ended him in ways more fitting. They tell of righteous perversities and witty mutilations. But this is the truth.
Well, if you're not in a bad enough mood about movies, we'll just end things off now. But there are a few movies we're looking forward to this fall, and we're next month going to be digging into Halloween horror as usual for October. So check back with us. Thanks for listening. Take care.
Goodbye, Mr. Bond.
I bid you farewell.